What is up, All About the Birds Nation? Happy Wednesday night, and welcome to the All About the Birds weekly report here on the All About the Birds network. I am one of your hosts, Jeff Warner, alongside co-host Johnny U Johnny Johnny U 9322. This Bell's palsy's kicking my fucking ass. Sorry, everyone. No Chip tonight. That guy is away on vacation. So right before the season starts, apparently I'm the only one that can't go on vacation. He's away. You just got back from the beach, so kudos.
That's your
What's that?
that's your fault.
Yeah.
Go on vacation. Go ahead.
But this is the All About the Birds weekly report. We have a great show on tap for all you gentlemen and ladies out there on our platforms. A lot to get into. We'll dive into discussing Thursday's game in a little bit. Also, our poll question of the week we'll dive into first. But first, we have to pay the bills real quick. As we do here on the All About the Birds network. We have a lot of great sponsors. Of course, my computer craps out. We'd like to thank our sponsors, Statement Games. You can check out Statement Games Inc. for a fun new way of fantasy sports and entertainment with gift cards and prizes. It is free to sign up. Make sure to check out the link below in the comment section or in the description of the show for that. I'd like to thank our sponsors, OddsJam. The OddsJam is the number one software platform for sportsbook bandits. Their software shows you how to make risk-free cash off FanDuel, DraftKings, and other books with their Arbitrage Calculator. The link is in the bio here of the show, so make sure to check them out. Like also thank our sponsor, 99 Jerseys. You can use our code AATBirds20 for 20% off discount at checkout. Get some kick-ass jerseys of your favorite movie characters and also guys. Sports guys of the past. A lot of college jerseys. They have Kobe Bryant high school jersey on there, so make sure to check them out. But Eagles football is on tap, so make sure, if you are new to the show, make sure you're hitting the like, follow, subscribe, share it out, tell your friends. We have a lot of great programming here on the All About the Birds network. Leave your comments below. If you have any questions, comments about the upcoming season or what your expectations for the year or this coming Thursday, make sure to leave your comments so we can check us out. So, Johnny, first off, let's dive into this a little bit. Training camp, there was a pretty interesting week. The Eagles did come off last week's loss to the Pittsburgh Steelers, and they got things back on tap by taking care and going up against the New England Patriots in some joint practices. So I want to get your thoughts. I know you've been keeping on tap and keeping up the things while you're away on vacation. So I just want to know your impressions or anyone that might have stood out from you from what we have seen and heard, especially throughout social media.
So I love these joint practices. I feel like you get a good feel of what you have with, the rosters going against another team. It's physical practices. My one thing is the takeaway would be, these receivers, there seem to be, they're showing some life. They're able to make some spectacular catches, like we saw Jalen Reagor make a hell of a snag in the back corner of the end zone, and the confidence and the growing sentiment with these guys. Yes, they're young, but they're building something. And Jalen Hurts, the quarterback, and the biggest thing is you saw something come out on these veterans and these players. They're buying into him, and they're buying into what he brings you on the field, what he brings you as a leader. And you love to see that. I'm all for it. I want to see him succeed. I want to see him, take it to that next level, for the Eagles, because right now you want to try to find that next guy, that next franchise quarterback for your team. And, I love going against a team like, Bill Belichick and the Patriots, but, it's great to see, because the thing is, you're seeing these guys for a couple days in practice, and then you're going up against them in the game. So it's, like I said, and this is week number 2, which to me, is it going to be like week 3 of previous years where you see the starters playing about a quarter and a half? That's what I'm pretty, excited about. So that's something definitely to look forward to. But you're seeing some players show out a little bit, and you're seeing guys like Quez Watkins and Jalen Reagor, and even Devontae Smith is getting back on the field, taking reps and looking like he's just about ready to go as well. So a lot of fun stuff in Eagle Land that, we're seeing.
Yeah, definitely. And you brought up a lot of key players that are getting a lot of recognition and turning some heads in training camp and in these practices. Because, like you said, uh, the, it's not just a short little practice or like walkthroughs, or they're going out there and performing.
Yeah.
Granted, the coaches are not going out there and playing their game plan in these practice when the Patriots and the Eagles are going up against one another, but the fact that Bill Belichick was basically sulking his head throughout practice, and there was moments during the last couple of days that you, from what reporters have said, there's a lot of discuss on there. Granted, this ain't the New England Patriots with Tom Brady. This ain't the
Nope.
same team that they were winning 6 Super Bowls, but it's still Bill Belichick. It's still one of the greatest head coaches of all time, and he still has a couple of those players that were on this Eagles roster. Granted, different regime with Jalen Mills and Nelson Aguilar, so. You would think maybe they would have a little bit of a say or a little bit of input on their former teammates, but the fact that Jalen Hurts is connecting and impressing not just our reporters but New England Patriot reporters, the fact that he's getting that type of recognition, it's promising for Eagles fans and for this fan base that it looks like Jalen Hurts is coming into his own. I want to see more from him though, because 10 snaps last week was not enough. So I agree with you. I think this week might be the week that it's definitely they're at least going to play half. It's going to be interesting to see what they do next week. Maybe they only give them a series, maybe only a quarter. But I definitely feel that the Eagles need to get as much snaps and much gameplay with their quarterback and with their offense and with their team going into the regular season, whether they play all 3 preseason games or not.
Yeah, and Ryan brings a great point up here. It sucks to see, Tyree Jackson today mentioning he has that back surgery. He had made a spectacular catch in the back of the end zone in one of the practices and fell on his back, and apparently has to have surgery on I don't know, a potential break in his back or something with his back. He needs to have surgery. He's gonna be out 8 to 10 weeks. So unfortunately,
It sucks.
It sucks, and
he was. Go ahead.
And it brings up the point where a guy like Richard Rodgers is crucial to have on the team now, because with Zach Ertz, what happens with that, we don't know yet. But if he stays on the team, then you have Ertz, Goddard, and Rodgers, who's been there before. But if he doesn't, then there's opportunity for these guys. And it's funny because they just cut Caleb Wilson, who played a little bit last year, who was a tight end. So their tight end depth now is, you have guys on the bottom end of that roster, on the bottom end of that depth chart for tight end, like Jack Stoll and Hakeem Butler and Jason Kroom, and you have guys like that are hoping to open eyes and to be able to get a spot, whether it's a practice squad edition or something like that. So unfortunately, the injury sucks because of the glowing reports that we were seeing out of training camp and out of these practices, and the type of player that he was starting to show, and his size and the ability to catch the ball. So unfortunately, it sucks, and I was hoping to see more of him because I liked what I saw in him. But it opens up for these other guys to hopefully, take a step and maybe, take that next step. But it's not looking good. He'll most likely stay on the 53-man roster. They can't waive him. A lot of people I saw were talking about, well, can they just put him on IR now and get a roster spot? Well, they can't, because if they do waive him, a team can claim him and then stash him, basically. So you have to wait for the 53-man rosters, and then you can IR him. So that's what most likely they will do. But
and I think that's definitely what they're going to do. It's unfortunate for him, but he's definitely one of those players that he's not ready for the NFL spotlight yet, or get a decent amount of playing time. There's always that one guy throughout training camp or throughout the preseason that always impresses the fan base, and you're always rooting for them because they're out there on that field, they're out there performing and putting up numbers, which is great. But you have to remember the level of competition that some of these guys are going up against. There's always been I forget who it was a couple of years ago, the one wide receiver,
Paul Turner.
Yeah, Paul Turner, the one year out, he was a guy that everyone wanted to stick on this roster. But you have to realize most of these guys are camp bodies, and I feel that Jackson, he's definitely a guy that can make an impact down the road. But as far as for this season, it's kind of a blessing in disguise, I feel, for him as well as for the Eagles organization, because they don't have to risk, especially with the uncertainty of Zach Ertz, which in my opinion right now, he's going to be on this roster day one unless for some reason there's a major injury to a playoff-ready team or a playoff-bound potential team, and they need a tight end, and they are willing to give up decent draft pick for him, then he's out the door. But you keep a veteran like Richard Rodgers, who if you had an injury like this, you probably could have picked up in the middle of the season. And he's a guy that brings that little bit of veteran leadership. People tend to forget that Richard Rodgers has been in the league for quite some time. He was with the Green Bay Packers. I think he was with another team before us. He's like 29 years old. So he's not like a young, up-and-coming guy, but he's a serviceable guy. He's a guy that
get the job done.
He gets the job done. He catches everything that is thrown his way. He's definitely a solid backup, especially depending what Sirianni does with this offense and this rotation. But it's unfortunate for Jackson, but it gives him time to hold a clipboard, still learn the offense, and go to training and get ready for next season when hopefully he can make more of an impact.
And you look at these practices, especially with the Patriots, and you're seeing there's been some people talking about Arcega-Whiteside and that he's starting to look a little bit of what they somewhat kind of thought he was going to be. But you look at a player like Travis Fulgham, you haven't really heard much of him. With Quez Watkins coming up, so you have these three young guys with Devontae Smith, Rager, and Watkins, and then after that, I feel like that's going to be a major battle when you have Fulgham and Arcega-Whiteside and Greg Ward, and you have these bulk, basically guys fighting for the last few spots. Who's going to basically, get those spots? And I think one thing with Arcega-Whiteside is the fact that he plays special teams, I think may help him in getting possibly that last spot. But again, that's why these last two games are going to be crucial. And, Fulgham has been a guy where we saw it last year. He jumped out and, you saw the production that he put, but then all of a sudden he fell off. And now
blame freaking Alshon Jeffrey for that one. And Howie Roseman sticking his needle neck into freaking football game day operations, forcing Doug Peterson's hand. So that's why Fulgham and Quez Watkins didn't get as much playing time down the stretch. Because as soon as
Hightower, I forgot to add Hightower as well, since he's now back at practice as well. So it's going to be those four receivers fighting for possibly 3 spots, maybe 2 to 3 spots. It's going to be a pretty exciting battle because someone's going to have to make the team. So you're going to have to, I like that battle because all those guys do different things. So who's going to shine? That's the one thing that you're going to see these next couple games. So that was big. And I know someone said up here about Kerryon Johnson. We'll get to all the injuries and the moves and all that a little bit later. We'll talk about that. But what are you looking for in terms of this preseason game coming up tomorrow night?
I'm looking for. I want to see consistency. I want to see more from our quarterback. I want to see more from this offense. Look, they played well last week. And on the defense side of the ball, I want to see what we have with our starters. That's what we need to really be eyeing because, like we possibly said, this could be the final dress rehearsal for the regular season. This could be the last time we see significant playing time from these veterans. And I understand that they don't need to see much from Miles Sanders, but I still want to see him out there. I hope he gets a little bit of playing time. I understand they want to risk injury or wear and tear on his body and this and that, but this is a freshly new offensive game plan and new offensive scheme with a new quarterback and a new head coach and a new offensive coordinator. I want to know what we have when we're at full strength. Now that Devontae Smith is back in practice, hopefully he's a go for Thursday. I don't know what Sirianni said today. I don't know if he was asked or if it was addressed, but I'm hoping that we're at full strength and we can see finally what this offense entails, especially now that you're seeing Quez Watkins in the fold and making a dramatic leap in his play. You have Jalen Rager, who's making plays in practice. I want to see him transition that to the game plan, to the game, especially going up against this defense that they've been going up against the last 2 days. So they're figuring out the opposing team's tendencies and what they do a little bit with their defense. So I'm hoping that our offense explodes and are able to move the football and put some points up on the board. It would put me a little bit at ease going to that week 1 game against Atlanta.
And, Jay has a question here. Do you guys think the coach is true to his words, really uses strength, hurts to his strengths with a lot of read options and rollouts? And I believe in what Sirianni says, what he says he's going to do, what he wants to do. And I think you're going to see them try to use, all the players, Hurts, even all the other positional player, running backs, tight ends, receivers. They're going to use these players to what they do best. And I don't know. Until I see otherwise, I feel he's going to use him to his strengths, and he's going to use him to, get the most out of the offense. But I agree with you. One player I want to see is Miles Sanders. I understand you don't need to see a lot from him, just a little bit. Just give me a little bit from him. But the one player that looks like he's basically locked up that number 2 spot right now looks to be Jordan Howard. And that's something that we did not think of when they signed Jordan Howard. We thought you did. Oh, like,
I didn't think he would get number 2, but I did consider him that he was definitely going to make the roster.
I wasn't off of him. I said you should, keep an eye out for him because he can show flash. He's not old. He's still a young guy. But the thing is, if he makes the roster, which looks like right now looks like he will be, the bigger question, and what we'll have to ask Chip next time he is on, is when he's getting his Jordan Howard jersey for the show. That's the other big question. But no, it shows you a lot with this running back of Miles Sanders and Jordan Howard, and then Kenny Gainwell, who, as I saw reports that he catches everything, and his routes and how he runs. A lot of people like to, compare him to Antonio Gibson, who was drafted by the Washington football team last year. They were in the same backfield in Memphis in 2019. And Gainwell actually outperformed Gibson and was a better player. So he's definitely somebody that I really want to keep my eyes on, especially in this game. I want to see the young guys. I want to see the guys on offense and the guys on defense, whether it's, Kenny Gainwell and all these, Kayvon Wallace, and which I know you starting to become your favorite player with his jawing at Cam Newton and Mr. Checkdown. I thought that was great.
Hilarious.
But I want to see these young guys, keep playing better. And, that's the biggest thing with these preseason games is getting the development, getting the kinks out, and just keep, playing. I understand preseason's preseason. We saw it in 2015 with Sam Bradford against the Packers.
Yep.
Take it with a grain of salt. Don't over exaggerate everything, but you can just take a look into certain things because you can see, who's starting to play a little bit better. And, I don't know. Do you know if Andre Dillard is still out with an injury?
As far as I know, I believe he is still injured, or they're keeping him, I think, day to day, where he's getting some, or he might not practice one day, or I don't think he's playing tomorrow. So, as far as I know, or from what I read, I could be wrong, but there's definitely going to be certain positions that we're keeping our eye on, and that's what this preseason is about. Do these guys want to go out there and win football games? Of course, it's a pride thing, but overall, the preseason is about the coaches evaluating their talent, and as fans, you need to do that as well. It's fun and exciting. Football is finally back, but you get a little bit of an idea of maybe some of the guys that the team are looking at, or who, like, based off of playing time or production, and who maybe the coaches are in love with or want to see more of, and that's what these final 2 preseason games are going to be about. Especially the last week, it's got those guys fighting for those final couple spots, guys that are possibly on the bubble, and especially in some of these battles when it comes to a lot of these positions, which the Eagles did make a couple cuts earlier this week, and one position is already getting a lot lighter, which it came to a little bit of a surprise a little bit, Johnny.
So
I don't know if you have the list in front of you.
Yeah, I got everything. So first, what they did was a few days prior to the eventual cut down, they activated LaRaven Clark off of the active PUP list, which is, a veteran offensive tackle, offensive lineman, can kind of do a number of things, which is interesting. And then they cut Adrian Killens, wide receiver, and they cut tight end Caleb Wilson. Both of them happened to be claimed. Killens was claimed by Denver, and Wilson was claimed by Washington. And then they waived injured Casey Tucker, Luke Juriga, which I thought they liked Luke Juriga a lot, and then Kerryon Johnson, who had knee injury and that's the biggest thing. And you're injured in camp, and you're on the roster bubble. That's the biggest detriment. And all three of those guys wind up going unclaimed and reverted back to the Eagles IR, which I'm not sure if all of them will stay on the IR. Some may get settlements and be able to go free, but they can't re-sign with the Eagles until a certain time. But that, and then you had Tyree Jackson with the injury that we already mentioned previously. So,
definitely the biggest name on that list, and a lot of people kind of had a little bit of expectations for him, and that's Kerryon Johnson.
I had expectations for him. I thought he was going to be, a good number 3, possibly number 4 running back for you. I thought he had, opportunity to make the roster over guys like Boston Scott and possibly Jordan Howard. So, of course, I was wrong on that. But again, the injury didn't help him, and ultimately that was the detriment to him, was the injury. But
even with the injury, I kind of felt it was going to come down between him and Jordan Howard, and because they're both that similar type of back, that big body back that can bring you that change of pace guy out of the backfield. And I feel Jordan Howard basically solidified his spot on that blitz pickup in the first series of last week's game. When Nick Sirianni looked back to that game tape and saw what Jordan Howard's able to do, and the fact that he's come along a little bit since last year, he's picking things up, he's looking good in camp, I don't think they need to see anything from Kerryon Johnson. And I forget what his exact contract was, but I think his deal was a little bit more expensive than Jordan Howard, if I remember right.
His deal also, there's no cap penalty with it, so they cut him. Yeah. They don't owe him anything, so it's one of those. And when you saw Jordan Howard, when Miles Sanders wasn't going to play, and you saw Jordan Howard out there, right there, you thought, okay, it seems to be pretty clear cut who the number 2 guy is, which I know you mentioned in our chat. Look who's out number 2 there, and it was Jordan Howard. And they're not going to get rid of Kenny Gainwell, the guy they just drafted. Boston Scott, yes, he's not a feature back, but if he's your number 3 or number 4 guy, gives you a lot of value because he can do a number of things. He can play on special teams. He can play out in the slot. They just
better not put him at fucking kick returner. If they put Boston Scott at kick returner, I swear to God, whoever the hell is our special teams coordinator needs to be fired. Unless
that'll be Michael Clay.
Yeah, unless for some freaking reason Boston Scott has made a giant leap from last year to this year, because last season he could not judge a kick returning. He could not judge the blockers up front. He would take it out of the end zone thinking he's some speedster, that he's goddamn Devin Hester or Deshaun Jackson, that he's going to make a big play, which give him kudos. He has confidence in himself. But the fact that you came and get it past the 20-yard line on a consistent basis, when you down and get it to 25, you're losing field position. So I'm hoping that if Boston Scott is involved with some type of return game, that he's either better coached up or whatever, or is only used in there as a dire need, because after last season, I do not have faith in Boston Scott to be that kick returner, which obviously we're not seeing much in the preseason so far. So I don't think he's much in the plans for that, but you never know.
Yeah. And that position is kind of almost solidified kind of who the spots are, which, it's like I said, the other thing was the Luke Juriga, because I know, he was another center, but with wave injured, players, if they're injured, they can't really be on the field. And I know after Kelsey went out, I think it was Herbig who was playing backup center, which is a position that when he first came into the league, he didn't play any games. I think 2019, he was the backup center. He was undrafted free agent out of Stanford, and he was the backup center, and they liked him at center. And then last year played guard because of all the injuries, and played both guard spots. But it shows you.
I'd say they definitely love guys with versatility, and when it comes to him, I think the reason he got cut is because they eventually have in the fold highly drafted linemen with Landon Dickerson, and I feel they're definitely going to value him or get him some playing time, or put him in some type of competition for one of the guard spots, or to be the backup center. They'll learn from an all-pro like Jason Kelsey when he eventually retires. So I'm not too surprised at that, but I definitely agree with you, especially this early in the preseason, when you still have 2 preseason games, when it's definitely a position that you lacked last year as far as depth. So for them to cut one of their offensive linemen this early kind of surprised me a little bit, especially since you have 2 more games and you want to see a lot of playing time from these backups. So you don't want to risk a lot of your starters getting a lot of playing time and risking further injury.
So the other thing with that is, next Tuesday you have to cut down to 80 then. So there's 5 more players. But again, you're going to see, of course, 5 players. It really isn't a lot. But this preseason game, you're going to have a lot of the guys playing probably the first half. So basically the second half is for the rest to kind of show what they can do. But I'm more interested. I'd always like to see after the starters leave, who's that next guy that takes that gets, because I've heard a lot of the rookie from Tulane, Patrick Johnson, getting a lot of snaps because I think who's the guy that is I'm drawing a blank here, but Jannard Avery, he has a groin injury, and I know, of course,
get him off the fucking field.
The tough part is these guys with the injuries. That it's the worst part because, one, especially at linebacker, they don't have depth. So a guy like Patrick Johnson, in the reps he's getting, he's a rookie. I think he was 7th round draft pick. Getting the reps there, and they like what he can do. And he was a stand-up edge rusher at Tulane, and they're using him in a little bit different of a variety here in the Jonathan Gannon's defense. But that's my big thing, is to see what guys are the next ones in line, basically, because those tell you how they're practicing on the field, how they're looking in the workouts, how they're looking during scrimmage, what they're doing, albeit the game. The game only tells you so much. It's also about what they do in practice, what they do, in the meeting room. It takes more than just what they do in the game. A guy can be really good in the game, but if he's not practicing well, there's more to it. And that's what I want to see, because that'll tell you who's actually impressing the coaching staff, because this coaching staff isn't tied to a lot of these players, which is going to be interesting come cut down day, and who gets let go and who stays.
Yeah, definitely. This is the All About the Birds weekly report. Myself, Jeff Warner, Johnny U. Chip is away on vacation. Make sure, again, you're following, liking, subscribing. Leave those comments. Keep the comments coming in. We appreciate everyone that's been tuning in and supporting us so far. Again, make sure to follow us on Twitter, Facebook, YouTube, Instagram. A lot of great content from all our on all our platforms. So make sure to, again, continue to check it out. And we do have a question here from one of our listeners. Ryan Bollinger asks us, do you think we've seen anything from Nick's playbook yet? And no, look, I think we've seen a little bit of glimpses. But look, preseason isn't about showing your playbook. You don't want your plays that you're game planning for the season to be out there on tape. Granted, everyone kind of knows if you're running a certain offense, similar to what type of plays you're going to do or sets and things like that. But overall, most coaches, they get the kinks out for their playbook during practice. And this ain't the week. I don't think the Eagles are doing that because of the Patriots. You don't want them knowing your signals or your tendencies or things like that. So I don't think we've seen the full playbook of Nick Sirianni's playbook just yet, and I think we're going to see that and hopefully a big offensive explosion week 1 when we're in Atlanta. Johnny?
Well, you hope that, because you'll be there to be able
I'm
to
hoping.
see the offensive
Spending all that freaking money to travel to freaking Atlanta, and we better put up more points than some of the previous times we played in Atlanta.
Yeah, Atlanta's always been. But again, remember, Julio Jones is no longer on the Atlanta squad. So
still, Calvin Ridley, Kyle Pitts. You still have Matt Ryan, a former All-Pro. Their defense is lacking, so I kind of feel we can put up some points. It could be an exciting game and a shootout, but who knows? We don't know how this offense is going to pan out. We're hoping that on paper that it pans out and that we have an explosive offense, because we finally have a number 1 receiver with Devontae Smith that we hopefully believe in, that can turn the corner for this offense and be that big playmaker we've been looking for the last couple of years. We have Quez Watkins, who's finally coming into his own and taking that next leap from year 1 to year 2 with him in this offense. Hightower and Rager, we hope major contribution. We still arguably have the best tight end combination in National Football League right now on paper, as it sits with Zach Ertz still on the roster and Dallas Goedert hopefully having a rebound season. And you have Miles Sanders, a running back last season that had a subpar year, but he wasn't utilized enough. So hopefully Nick Sirianni this year is definitely a guy that can get the best from his players and get the best from Miles Scott or Miles Sanders, and then you have a pretty decent depth behind him that you can utilize. So I'm having high hopes for this offense right now. I would still want to see a little bit more in preseason. It's the defense I definitely want to see a lot more from, though.
Yeah, and the other thing with the offense that's going to be the catalyst is the offensive line. The offensive line is healthy. That's what's going to make the offense run. That's what's going to get it to go. So, but again, like you said, the defense is a point that I really want to see, and I want to see the way it's run because it's going to be different than previous years that we've seen. So, and I like Gannon. I like his enthusiasm. Like I said, this whole coaching staff, it breeds competition. It breeds, coaching. And I understand coaches in the NFL, they all coach, but I feel like the last couple of years, it just seemed to be a little, vanilla. And it's just,
It got too political.
Yeah.
In that locker room. Basically, the way this team was ran, there was not a lot of competition. Granted, certain positions are not going to be up for grabs. Like, Jason Kelce, unless he's hurt, he's going to be your starting center. Yeah. Same for Lane Johnson. Same with Miles Sanders. There's certain positions that you kind of know who your starters are, but you still want them out there and giving it them all, giving 100%, and still having that hungry mentality that they're not satisfied with their performance so far, and take the next day to build upon that and try to get even better, which I kind of feel Nick Sirianni has established that type of mentality into this locker room, into this team. And the big key to all of that is that the veterans and the leaders on this team, I feel, are buying into it. And that's key, especially for a young team with a lot of young players. When you see veterans buy into a first-year head coach and what he's telling you and what he's doing in meetings and doing in practices, and Nick Sirianni, he's no joke. He's not messing around. The fact that I would say after the first or second practice, he stopped practice in the middle to tell them, hey, this is what you're doing wrong, and you need to step it up. Otherwise, I'll find people that are going to take your jobs and that will do what I'm telling them to do. So we haven't had that since. He's not taking no shit from no one, whether they're a veteran or a rookie. For a first-year head coach, he's definitely a guy that's not going to be walked all over.
Yeah, and that's key, especially they said in the OTA thing when he went to the veterans and said, "All right, what are we going to do? We want to get on," and he, was able to win them over and have a compromise to be able to get there and learn. You may not have had all the on-field stuff that you wanted to do, but the guys were there still, learning in person, not through Zoom or anything like that. So that was another key win for Sirianni as well. The other thing we didn't mention, Jeff, was there is a former Eagle who looks like he won't be back with the Eagles. A guy that was back and forth. A guy named Jason Peters is now on the Chicago Bears. That's one thing that we didn't mention. So with all the roster moves. So he did find a place with Chicago back with Nick Foles. And Matt Nagy, all that.
Thank God. I'll say it because the biggest thing for an Eagles fan that we had to worry about this offseason is someone getting hurt and Hallie picking up that phone, calling JP's agent and saying to him, yo, we want JP back. Nothing against JP. He's definitely a future Hall of Famer, definitely an All-Pro, but he's past his freaking prime. He's a guy that should not be considered a starter in the National Football League at this moment in his career, which I don't believe Chicago's going to put him as a starter. Maybe they told him, hey, you have a chance or some competition, but unless he just basically gave up on last season or gave no craps, look, JP needs to call it quits. I'm tired of players that just continue to ride the coattails of past performance or past accomplishments and try to continue to stay in the game way too freaking long. I love Brett Favre to death. He was definitely one of those guys, too, that kept, I can still play this game. I can still play this game. Learn to realize your worth and just go out in the pasture, call it quits, because 5 years from now, we'll be seeing his name in Canton whenever the hell he decides to retire.
Whenever that is, but...
Yeah, here's what Peanut said. This is probably the only reason JP's continued to fucking play. JP's still getting that money. That's all he freaking cares about right now. He wants to get paid as much as he can, which I don't blame him. If I'm in that position, I want him to get paid, but you still need to realize a guy his age, do you really want to go through these freaking training camps? Granted, you don't have to worry about two-a-days anymore, but Do you still want to go in this heat or traveling or this or
Well,
that?
he's only got like 10 days left, it seems, or whatever like that. So he kind of, it's halfway through, basically a little more than halfway through. So he doesn't get to do the full thing. But no, I understand what you're saying, and it was past that point. Eagles need to turn over the stone and find the next, which we hope is Jordan Mailata. It's looking like he's the next tackle for them. He's going to be the starter. All signs are pointing that way. It's what I would think. I don't really think Dillard has a shot anymore. But
like you said, if you're not out there in practice, you are not going to be getting playing time. And Andre Dillard, even though he was out there and practicing with the first team, he didn't show anything spectacular. He didn't do anything that you really stood out to you that made you feel, hey, he's definitely my starting left tackle. This is Mailata's job to lose at this point. And unless he gets hurt, Mailata, in my opinion, like you said, is definitely going to be your week one starter at left tackle. And what a story for Jordan Mailata. I know we talked about before, a former rugby player, a guy that never played in the National Football League, a 7th-round pick. But thank God, I understand people are like, why the heck are you drafting a guy in the 7th round that you possibly could have got undrafted or signed later on or whatever? You probably
it's not guaranteed, though. That's
exactly. So for once, we want to criticize Howie for horrible decision-making, whether he's the one that had to say in the draft or not. He finally looked like he finally made a right decision. Drafting a guy that should have went undrafted in the 7th round. You're finally getting a quality left tackle. Granted, I'm not saying he's going to be Jason Peters or a Trey Thomas or any of these perennial all-pros, but right now on paper and what he has shown you so far in developing that growth, especially with a O-line coach like Statland to continue to develop him, he can be a very serviceable starter at left tackle for you or any team in the National Football League at this moment.
It's funny. You look at, I'm not trying to be, praising Howie or, defending him, but if you take a look at the last couple of drafts, the 2018 draft, Dallas Goedert, Avonte Maddox, Josh Sweat, Matt Pryor, Jordan Mailata. Take out the Matt Pryor, you still have Goddard, Maddox, Sweat, Mailata. It's pretty decent for only having 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 selections. So, and then even look at last year's draft. You look at these guys, and if they can take that next step, and I've mentioned it multiple times that if this coaching staff can get development out of guys from the previous 2 to 3 drafts to show them to be the next guys or the next player that, can be that cornerstone. And does Howie get credit for that? Because if these players flop under this coaching staff, I'm sure he'd get bashed for that. So that's one thing that I always like to say is you have to just be aware of, he was instrumental in drafting these players, but if they pick this coaching staff and these coaches can develop and get you, what you can, what you saw and what you wanted out of some of these players, you got to give him some credit because he's had a heck of an offseason. He signed some, pretty value signings, didn't overpay for anybody. So, time will tell, of course, but it's just an idea to keep in the back of your head. And, Ryan has a question here about McLeod. Do you think he's going to start week 1? I go back and forth on that. I have a feeling that he's going to be determined to start week 1. But in my honest opinion, I think he's going to start on the PUP list for the first I think it's the first 6 weeks, maybe. I think 6 weeks is the PUP.
I don't think he's going to be starting week 1. I feel they're going to try to ease him back into that. They don't want to risk losing him for the season. I do not think they're going to start him on the PUP list because from what I have read, that he probably should only be out a couple weeks. If ease him back into it. So I don't think they want to risk keep having him out through 6 weeks. So I do think he's going to be a scratch or inactive for a lot of these games, but still on the main roster.
Let's just hope it's not like the Alshon thing where they put him on the PUP list and then he didn't play until week 10 or 11.
Or Deshaun Jackson, where he was on the main list or the main roster. He came back for 1 game, got hurt again, and that was a freaking disaster. So that's why I kind of feel they don't want to rush him back into thing. It's a major injury, a guy that plays a very, very physical position that they don't want for a guy his age. Also, you don't want to risk him pushing him back too early, especially since I haven't really been seeing a lot of negative things about Kayvon Wallace. Granted, it's practice, and we didn't hear his name much in the regular season or preseason game. So I guess no recognition or no hearing his name is somewhat a good thing because he's not getting burned, he's not missing tackles, he's not missing coverages. So I kind of think they want to see what they have with Kayvon Wallace right now. With Rodney McLeod possibly out to start the year, because like we keep on saying, we need to know what we have with a lot of these young guys, especially last year's draft class. You need to know what you have with Kayvon Wallace and Davion Taylor and some of these other gentlemen. That you need to know what their role is and what your future beholds going into next season, because there's going to be a lot of turnover on this roster going to next year with the amount of firepower they have in next year's draft, and you need to know what positions you need to address. Granted, some of these guys, they'll probably still be on the roster, but you need to know if you need to upgrade that position or not in next year's offseason.
So one position that we feel that they possibly did upgrade and was our emphasis of our poll question this week was, what young wide receiver are you most looking forward to this year? Now, I put 3 selections: Devontae Smith, Quez Watkins, and Jalen Reagor. Now, Devontae Smith ran away with it, 71% of the vote. It was 457 votes, so it is above Jeff's threshold of a actual real poll. So that's good stuff. We appreciate everyone voting. We really, really appreciate that. Quez Watkins was 21%, and Jalen Reagor was 8%. Now, I voted Devontae Smith, but I can see where some people wanted to vote Quez Watkins. But the reason I did Devontae Smith was he has, everything that's been talked about of him and what he's done collegiately. And to me, he's that guy that can be that number 1 star receiver that we haven't had in a long time. And, Peanut said Quez, which I'm sure there's a video evidence of that. So sure Jeff's gonna have to dig that up and play that on Peanut Show, Peanut Show. But who did you go with?
Yeah, I went with Devontae. Look, and all of Eagles Nation is looking at Devontae because, look, he's a guy that you traded up for in this past April's draft. You got him with the 6th overall pick or whatever the hell it was. So he's definitely has a lot of high expectations. And the fact that you got a possible Heisman Trophy winner candidate, a human highlight reel out of college, finally a deep threat, a guy that can stretch the field and help put points on the board, especially since we didn't know what we had with Jalen Reagor. We drafted a lot of young wide receivers in the last couple of years' drafts and guys that we don't know if they're going to pan out, like J.J. Arcega-Whiteside. So there's a lot of eyes on Devontae Smith because of where he was selected, what you did to get him, and the expectations of him coming out of college, and some of the scrutiny of him. Like, look, he was a guy that a lot of people considered the best wide receiver in the draft, but also possibly the most fragile wide receiver in the draft, just by his size. Is he durable enough to play in the National Football League? And he's a guy that
put on a little bit of muscle, though. If you look at some of his,
he did, but here he got hurt in training camp. So right off the bat, there's a guy that's already been missing practice and missing some time to get some reps and get that camaraderie and get with his quarterback and try to get that. What's the word I'm looking for?
Chemistry.
Yeah, that's it. The other C word. Trying to get some chemistry with his quarterback and get out there. So definitely, I'm going to be keeping our eyes on him because we want our early round picks to develop quickly and go out there and perform like we hoped they would. But look, Quez is having a hell of a camp for the first time in quite some time. Like you said, this was a position that had a major question mark going to the season. We did not know what we had at the wide receiver position, but outside of Devontae Smith. We kept on saying that Devontae Smith would step on this field day one. It was automatically better than absolutely everyone in the wide receiving core on this roster. I don't know if that's the case at this moment right now. Devontae Smith is still a hell of a player, but now with Quez in the fold and making tremendous plays, not only in camp, but on game day. The fact that he beat the coverage down the field on the overthrown pass, the bubble screen where he freaking saw his speed and ran down the field for 79 freaking yards. So we definitely have a little bit more of an upside with our wide receiving core and a little bit more at ease with what we have. Now, I'm a little bit more comfortable with what we have at the wide receiving position than I did a couple months ago.
Especially when you have guys, the veteran of the group, Greg Ward and Fulgham, potentially on the bubble because of these other guys that are showing out. And Quez has really jumped up and opened a lot of people's eyes. And, watching him coming out, and the speed you could see when he played at Southern Miss. And, they drafted him in the 6th round, but how deep that receiver class was. And I know there was potentially some red flags with him, the reason that he dropped so low that he did. But you could see it on tape on what he did and how he can somewhat help you on the offensive side of the ball because he could spread the field. And you can see that it's absolutely evident what he can do. And like I said, if he's healthy, a guy I'll say don't discount possibly sneaking on the roster is John Hightower. John Hightower last year did show you he could run down the field, he could get open. The biggest issue was catching the ball, which of course, if you're a receiver, that's one of the, biggest things you need to do is catch the ball. But you're right. I think it's put a lot of fans at ease seeing what you have. You have Devontae and Jalen Reagor starting to show a little bit of his confidence. And that's the main thing with him. It's, the confidence building and to be able to go out there and know what you're going to do. And, that's evident. That's key. We saw it when we had Nelson Aguilar. You look at Nelson Aguilar, when he finally had some confidence in what he could do, he really showed out, especially in 2017 and 2018. He showed you what he could do. And that's huge. Plus, a guy like Quez Watkins to be able on the field. Those 3 guys, plus then you have Fulgham and Ward and Arcega-Whiteside and Hightower, depending on who makes the roster. Yeah. And it definitely has put fans at ease. But I can see why some fans would say Quez Watkins the most looking forward to because he's kind of come out of nowhere, if you want to say. And I feel like they want to see what his ceiling is and what he can do.
Exactly, and he's definitely a guy that a lot of people were lobbying for to get more playing time last year, especially when him and Hightower were going on their few stretches of showing what they're able to do. So I kind of feel that's why some people did vote for Quez because we know what we have with Devontae, and like what you said, we don't know what we have with Quez for the most part, and he's finally developing and coming out of his shell, and he's a guy that can show you that he can be a burner in this league. And I know a couple weeks ago on our show when we were doing the NFC East preview, we pretty much all agreed that the Dallas Cowboys had probably the best wide receiving core in the division. As of today, I am retracting my bid for that, and I'm going to say on a limb right now, I'm going to go with our Philadelphia Eagles. I'm not trying to be a homer, but when you try to compare the two, I kind of feel we are arguably –
we need like a boom, boom. We need like a sound. We need like a sound, like a huge –
yeah, we need a retract button or something. I'm going to go on a limb and say we can be arguably the best wide receiving core in our division. You compare us to our top 3 to their top 3, Panning, we know what we have with the Dallas Cowboys. You know what you have with Amari Cooper, a guy that bails on his football team when he doesn't get thrown the football from Dak Prescott against our Philadelphia Eagles. You have CeeDee Lamb, who he was a little bit of a disappointment for a first-round selection last year. He didn't live up to the hype like Jalen Reagor, same as Jalen Reagor. Michael Gallup might be their best wide receiver on that roster at the moment when the other 2 aren't performing. So look. Devontae Smith, I understand, hasn't stepped on the football field yet, but if he can live up to his Alabama days, we are going to be torching opposing teams' defenses. Quez Watkins, with that speed, the fact that he can stretch the field or even get you yards after the catch. He's going to be a deadly force that teams are going to be eyeing on and trying to game plan against. And Jalen Reagor, he's in year 2 with Nick Sirianni and a new coaching staff and a new staff that is going to help develop him and put him on the right track, which is something Doug Peterson did not do at all with his tenure here in the Philadelphia Eagles, is developing talent. And the fact that Nick Sirianni has the background of developing wide receivers and quarterbacks in the National Football League, I have high hopes for Jalen Reagor to have a bounce back year in year 2, just from what we've been able to see in camp. And even last week's game when he was throwing the ball, he had 2 catches out of 3 targets. That's already freaking improvement from last season. So I'm going on a limb and say our wide receiving core, watch out for them, NFL, because they're coming for you.
I like that. Man, that's definitely going to be the feature moment on the little clip this week. It's definitely going to be. But you also have to realize when you're talking receiving core, you're talking tight ends too. And if Zach Ertz and Dallas Goedert are still on the roster, both guys, and these 3 guys show out and are able to show you something, Eagles may have something there. So we're definitely going to save that clip because that's going to be a very bold statement as
come at me, everyone.
But I think that's a great point to end the show with. That's an absolute great statement to kind of like mic drop.
Real quick, I'll say Michael's been coming in with some great questions. And again, we appreciate everyone that's been tuning into the show. Continue those comments. Remember, we are here every single Wednesday, 9:15 start on the All About the Birds Network. We are the All About the Birds weekly report. So if this is your first time tuning in, we'd love to have you back here. Give us your comments. Give us your questions. Follow, like, subscribe, all our social media platforms, Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, YouTube channel. We have a ton of great content on all our platforms, not just Eagles, but all Philly sports and other sports throughout the world. So again, we appreciate everyone for tuning in and supporting us. But he asked us this question, who's going to start opposite of Brandon Graham? And my answer to that is, does it really matter? Like, look, I understand you have to give a definition of a starter as far as the depth chart and things like that. But I kind of feel with the amount of depth that we have with our front 4, especially the defensive end position and our pass rushing position, a lot of these guys, they're going to get all these guys are going to get significant playing time to keep them fresh. I understand Jim Schwartz ain't here anymore, and it's going to be interesting to see what Jonathan Gannon does, but with his cover 2 scheme, especially when you leave a lot of defensive backs, your cornerbacks, and man-to-man coverage, you need to make sure you're getting pressure on the quarterback consistently because you cannot leave your men in the backfield in coverage for too terribly long. So I do see Ryan Kerrigan, Josh Sweat, Derek Barnett, Brandon Graham, whoever else we have on this roster. Milton Williams, they might put a little bit at defensive end because of his speed and power rush and his ability. So these guys are going to be getting a lot of playing time to keep fresh, and I really don't consider anyone a key start or the definition of a starter because a lot of these guys are going to be getting a lot of playing time.
So I'll answer the question. I think the person who's going to start opposite of Brandon Graham, I think it's going to be Josh Sweat. But again, you are right. They are going to do rotation. You're going to have Derek Barnett. You're going to have Ryan Kerrigan. To me, Milton Williams, you're going to have guys rotating all over the place.
Yep.
Of course, like you said, we need to see what the exact rotation and, what kind of, the defensive scheme and everything that Gannon's definitely going to play because he's not going to show you everything in the preseason games. So we're still wondering exactly how everything's going to go with that. But I'll say it's Sweat. I'll answer the question, but like you're on point with it too, Jeff, with, we're going to see a rotation with some of these guys. They have enough bodies there to be able to keep guys fresh.
Yeah, definitely. Any final thoughts before we get out here, Johnny?
The only thing is, make sure you tune in tomorrow night after the Eagles preseason game. I will be on. I'm actually going to be on with AATBirds writer Adam Mack is going to join me. We're going to break down the Eagles preseason game against the New England Patriots. We're going to, talk about what we liked, what we didn't like. So hopefully get a good little show. It's not going to be super long. It'll be a short show. Our takeaways from what we saw in the game. So hopefully they're good takeaways. Hopefully we have a good game, but make sure that you tune in right after the game. And Adam and I will be live to break it all down.
Definitely. Tomorrow, Clockhead Zero, AATBirds post-game show, Eagles, Patriots, Johnny and Adam Mack at the 1s and 2s and breaking it down for all you. Tomorrow night, Thursday evening on the All About the Birds Network. Friday or Saturday, depending on when me and PN decide to do it. Birds, Beers, and BS. We will also be breaking down, giving your thoughts on the game. That will be a YouTube exclusive. So, again, Make sure you're liking, following, subscribing our YouTube channel and our other platforms for all of that. Also, Monday, Chips and Dish will be back, I believe. Chip will be back from vacation. And then, of course, tomorrow night also, 8 o'clock start is Across the Pitch, Philadelphia Union show as Mike and Dave will break down tonight's matchup of the Philadelphia Union game. So if you're a soccer fan or no soccer fans, make sure to send them to our platform for a great show because those guys do a tremendous job covering the Philadelphia Union and all the soccer news out there in the world of sports. So, again, thank you for everyone for tuning in tonight of All About the Birds Weekly Report from Ryan to Peanut to Michael, to Jay, to Jason, to everyone that tuned in tonight. We, again, appreciate everyone's support. Make sure you're following, liking, subscribing. Leave a comment, leave a review of our podcast. We definitely appreciate it. It definitely helps. Make sure to check out our All About the Birds shop for all our All About the Birds show gear at AATBirds.com/shop for all of that. Make sure you're checking out AATBirds.com as well. For all our latest news in the world of sports with the Eagles, with the Union, college football. Adam Mack, who Johnny will have on tomorrow, he wrote a great article today. Already looking at next year's draft class and guys to eye in this upcoming season of college football. So definitely check that out, as all our writers are doing a tremendous job plugging out some great coverage for all our readers and listeners out there. So again, we'll be back next Wednesday talking more Eagles football and talking the last week of the preseason, probably talking some final cuts, maybe Johnny's 53-man roster prediction. So make sure you don't miss that next week on here on the All About the Birds Weekly Report. So Jeff Warner, you can follow me at Twitter at Jeff Warner NFL. Johnny on Twitter at JohnnyU9322, AATBirds at AATBirds, and Chip, you can follow him, Chip for the Birds, on Twitter as well. So, again, have a great night. We'll see you next week. And as we say here on All About the Birds,
go Birds.